Every now and then I get a call from a client, Chris, or potentially a client where they've really been wronged and it just fires me up. She said, I'm going to go buy this laundromat. And it's not a terrible idea. They can be profitable. So the person selling her the laundromat represented that the laundromat was making $12,000 a month. Turns out that it was actually only making $3,000 a month. So now she wants to sue the laundromat for fraud. Now, Chris, you are an inherently skeptical person. What are some questions you might ask? Welcome to episode 98 of the Weekly Docket, a podcast by the Silberman Law Firm where we talk legal news and practical law. Today is November 26th, 2025. I'm Phil Silberman, owner of the firm and your host, and I'm joined by Chris Hield, who's our firm's supervising attorney. Chris, can you believe we're shooting a podcast the day before Thanksgiving?
I can. You look like you're somewhere cold.
I am. I'm up at my house in Massachusetts, and it's cold. It has been cold. So, yeah, I bought this.
Well, I moved to Texas. I don't like the cold.
Yeah, I bought this sweater at BJ's, and my wife said it was hideous, so I thought I'd wear it for the show.
And we thank you for it.
So we've got to do something Thanksgiving-like themed. So we'll talk about fried turkey. Are you a fan of fried turkey? Ever have it? Ever been around fried turkey? Chris, know anything about it?
I'm sure I've had it. I don't fry my turkey. I smoke my turkey. I love smoking things. So I've got my turkey. It's been brining since yesterday. I'm ready to smoke it tomorrow. It's one of my proud moments.
Smoked turkey is very good. It's also much safer. So I've got some turkey frying tips here. We're gonna go over just as a public service. All right. So here's when you fry a turkey. Basically, what you do is you have this pot. It's a 30-quart pot, typically metal pot. You put the grease in the pot. It's typically peanut oil. You heat up the grease, drop the turkey in, and then it fries. And it's a fire hazard. Every year you'll see somebody burn down their house with a turkey fryer. So tip one, don't do it inside your garage. Okay. Tip two, don't light your fire with the oil in the bucket. So when you put the pot on the base where the fire comes up on the flame, if you just start heating up your pot and there's nothing in it, you will burn a hole right through the pot. So don't do that. It's a common mistake. Once you do have the correct amount of oil in your pot, that oil needs to be at about 350 degrees Fahrenheit. That's where you want it. Your turkey, when you put it on the little stick or the rack before you drop it in, you want to have the legs pointing up. All right. So then there's the head down. There's actually no head because the head's been severed. But the neck cavity.
I go over the 99 Ranch here across the street. I'll get you a turkey with a neck and a head still
You can, and maybe you should fry that and that would be good. But yeah, put the neck down and then legs up. And then this is the most important part. Because you have all this hot grease and you're dropping the turkey in the grease, you don't want to do that around an open flame. And this is where people usually get in trouble and set fire to things. Turn the flame off as you're dropping the turkey in. That way, if the grease bubbles over, like if you've overloaded your grease, don't do that. You're supposed to use water first to get an estimate of what kind of volume your turkey is going to have. And then you drop it in, it's right. But let's say that your grease starts bubbling over. If you haven't cut the flame off, it just pretty much ignites everything on an open flame. So don't do that. Final tip I can give you is oil and water don't mix. So ice is frozen water. Be sure that your turkey is not frozen when you drop it in to fry, because that's
the big one.
Yeah, I think the big block of ice will actually explode. Never seen it happen, but yeah.
Even if it's just a little bit frozen. Mine was in the fridge for 3 days when I pulled it out on Monday, but it was still a little frozen.
Still frozen.
So you got to make sure that thing's all the way thawed.
Absolutely. All right. That's our public service. That's our turkey frying tips. If you're curious, there's a super funny frying video on YouTube by a guy. I think his name is Bruce Mitchell. He's a YouTube guy, and I believe he lives in Florida because he's got a do-rag when he teaches you how to fry turkeys, and on the do-rag it says Gator Man. It's just a hilarious educational video. All right.
I'll check that out.
Let's go ahead and talk about what's on our docket today. It's going to be a light day because we're doing the day before Thanksgiving. First thing we're going to talk about is what can a public school expel you for? Okay, mandatory expulsion, permissible expulsion, and what law governs that. And then we've got a fact pattern from a potential client. Grandfather passed away. We're going to talk about some heir property and adverse possession. And then finally, in our rant and rave section, we've got a topic about really dirty laundromat owners, bad people in general. You like the pun, really dirty laundromat?
Yeah, are we talking about dirty facilities or are we talking about unscrupulous people?
Unscrupulous characters that sell laundromats to hardworking people that want to get into the laundromat businesses, okay? All right, let's go ahead and kick it off with our legal questions section. My first question we've got is, what can you get expelled for in public school? My kids go to private school, and I have had kids in public school, and I was on this topic because you have kids, they're getting into trouble sometimes. Sometimes you just have friends' kids get into trouble and all that. And I was sitting around one night, and a lot of this stuff that happens in private school doesn't even rise to the level of any kind of concern at a public school, because in public school, at many public high schools in Texas, they're struggling with some very serious issues. So I was like, what do you have to do in public school to get expelled? We have a table. Now, Chris, you tell me whether you like it or don't like it, right? Tell me if you think the kid should be expelled, all right? So here's mandatory expulsion at a public school. 1, anything with weapons. If you bring a gun to school, illegal knives, as opposed to like a Leatherman or something like that, like a pocket knife. Not sure what an illegal knife looks like. Clubs, prohibited weapons. So we're good with that, right?
Yes.
Right. Drugs, alcohol, possession, use, distribution. What about if it's just a gummy? What if it's a gummy? Are we okay with that? Should he get expelled for bringing a gummy to school?
If rules are rules.
Okay. All right. Felonies. If you commit a felony, all right, at school, actually, or off school, by the way, if you commit a felony anywhere or on campus, you're getting expelled. Serious felonies.
Heir.
I don't know what an example of a non-serious felony would be, but all right. Here's discretionary stuff. Retaliation against employees. I'm not exactly sure what that one means. I guess if you maybe get disciplined by an assistant principal and you go and egg his car or something, that's discretionary. It depends how bad the retaliation is. Computer crimes. If you hack into the school's network, I guess, discretionary. That one's only discretionary. And then if you do get sent to an alternative learning, do you know what an alternative learning center is? No? No.
I could venture a guess, but no.
I didn't know this, but under the Texas Education Code, they decided that they call them DAEP, and I can't remember exactly what that stands for. Probably disciplinary something, disciplinary alternate, whatever. But it's an alternative learning center, and I think it's meant if you do mess up at the main school, you get sent there. Then if you continue messing around there and causing problems, then it's discretionary whether they expel you. So I think my brother-in-law was actually sent there in high school back in the 80s for alcohol-related stuff, like on a party bus and homecoming or something like that.
Bad stuff.
Right. That's discretionary. I hope he doesn't get mad at me for mentioning that, but I have 2 brother-in-laws, so you'll have to guess which one it was. All right. That's what you can get expelled for at a public school. Solidly in agreement, I think, with all those mandatory ones. No issues with those, Chris.
Yeah. It sounds like you have to be pretty bad to get expelled.
Any interest in getting into school law?
No thanks.
Okay. For private schools, otherwise known as independent schools, they're not governed by the Texas Education Code. So their stuff is much more loosey-goosey, and it really arises out of contracts. Chris, if you have kids at a private school ever again, you typically sign a handbook, they issue a policy manual, and then they're supposed to abide by their policy. So if they try to kick your kid out for something that's outside of the contract, that's where you get into these breach of contract stuff. And I do think we would do that. I like fighting breach of contract stuff. I don't love getting into sort of sovereign immunity issues with the public school system. Those are tough, but I would take a private school case, I guess. So
We've had admissions issues. We've had tuition issues.
Yeah.
I know one of our. I'm familiar with handbook issues, not personally, but perhaps through attorneys that I know that have had handbook issues with private schools. So yeah, you're right. It comes down to when you have a dispute with the administration, you better come ready to go through everything and discuss it and discuss whether the violations occurred and whether they rise to a certain level.
Yeah. And there's private schools have a tendency to run amok because they're not regulated so much. And I think there's a bit.
They have a conduct detrimental to the team policy or whatever. That's what we joke about because we like sports metaphors. But conduct detrimental to the team is anything. We can do whatever we want. You don't represent the brand. You don't represent a so-and-so student. Therefore, we think this is not the right place for you.
I was going through a private school handbook the other day, and I was shocked to see all the social media regulations and just how, talking about representing the brand, that was very businesslike. I just hadn't looked at one in a long time. So, yeah,
Are you not? I would imagine you're not allowed to post things in a school uniform.
it was in a great amount of detail, but they leave it. If you're the attorney drafting these things, you want to draft them in very much how you just said, very vague and ambiguous terms that are favorable to your school, right? As you say, conduct detrimental to the team, something you don't want a bunch of laundry list items that someone can take issue with. So it was just basically the school gets final say in what's posted to the brand. But what really surprised me is the handbook mandate, and this may have been on their own accounts, but the handbook mandated the detail of how they wanted their hashtags written. So it was really very, very corporate like. I was surprised to see that level of detail in there. But all right, we got to move on. We've got one more legal question. This is from a potential new client. Her grandfather who passed away. This is what we're getting. Sometimes you just get these things, Chris, and you got to make heads or tails out of it. Her grandfather who passed away has a property, but she is maintaining it and she is paying the taxes. One man told her that it is not her property, that someone else owns it, and even her neighbor built something within the property. What do you think? You want to take a stab at it, or you want me just to go for it?
I think the biggest myth to dispel and the public service announcement that we can make is paying taxes doesn't automatically grant you rights to a property. Paying taxes can have an effect. There are causes of action where paying taxes are an element of that cause of action. But a lot of people think that with nothing further, if I can establish that I've paid taxes for X number of years, I've acquired ownership of the property. And you shouldn't think that. You may have stumbled into another form of acquiring possessions of the property, but your mere paying of the taxes didn't do it for you. So don't just think, oh, I paid the taxes. Because we get that call all the time. Paid the taxes. No one else has paid the taxes. It would have gone to foreclosure if I hadn't paid it. So shouldn't I own it? On a practical level, I can agree. On a legal level, we have to follow the law.
Yeah. Said one of the issues I spotted here is Texas Uniform Partition of Heirs Act. And she's alleging that, hey, her grandfather owned it. Grandfather had multiple children. You could talk about something with 50 heirs here. She probably is a co-tenant. Co-tenant is just a fancy counterintuitive word for our listeners out there that means joint owner. But she probably is a co-tenant, and she could go through this process, the Partition of Heirs Act. Finding all the heirs would be a nightmare. Service would be a nightmare. Could potentially appoint an attorney ad litem, but not to belabor those issues too much. She's going to have the right to buy out the property is the main thing that relatively recent law does. And then
you may get credit for the taxes that she's paid,
right,
but you still have to gather all those people up.
Yeah.
And what we hear a lot is, oh, they don't care. They may have told you that, but we either have to serve them or they've got to sign a waiver. Just being told by word of mouth that they don't care isn't going to get us there.
I find that in the practice of law, Chris, people tend to care more when we send process servers after them. They start caring a little more. And especially if they realize that they may be owed some money, right? So they start to care a little bit more. All right.
That's right.
Let's go ahead and move on to our final section, my favorite part of the show, rant and rave. Every now and then I get a call from a client, Chris, or potentially a client where they've really been wronged and it just fires me up. And this is just one of these examples, not a complex area of the law. And Chris, I think this person hired us. We don't give away any information where the person could actually be identified. We just stick generally to the facts. And oftentimes I change up the facts. But this person, just a hardworking person, she was a nurse practitioner, life savings of about $300,000. And she wanted to invest in a laundromat. She said, I'm going to go buy this laundromat. And it's not a terrible idea. They can be profitable. So the person selling her the laundromat represented that the laundromat was making $12,000 a month. Turns out that it was actually only making $3,000 a month. So now she wants to sue the laundromat for fraud. Now, Chris, you are an inherently skeptical person. What are some questions you might ask this potential new client or this client? What kind of due diligence did you do? Yeah.
Yeah, I would ask for the books. The problem with laundromats, car washes, certain other establishments that are cash heavy is it's easy to fabricate the books.
Yeah.
So if they say, yeah, we're pulling this in, they don't photocopy the quarters.
Yeah.
You can see credit card receipts, you can see checks if those still exist, but quarters and dollar bills, if they say they're bringing it in, I guess you would need to see cash deposits. I guess you would really want to see cash deposits of X, but even that could be fabricated a little bit.
You're a smart guy, and that's exactly, you would start asking all those questions. She actually did a huge amount of due diligence. I think she even told me she took some classes on how to buy these types of businesses because they do trade fairly regularly. And she was told that she's got to check the security footage and actually watch people coming into the laundromat. And then you check the amount of quarters in these machines, and that's how you verify. You don't even rely on the books. And turns out in this case, they allege they didn't have any books anyway, but all right, so be it. And what she says that they did to her is that they preloaded all the quarters. Like they just went in, turned the security cameras off, went in, loaded the machines up with a bunch of quarters. And then they edited the security footage so that there were huge gaps. So it looked like lots of people were coming, but it was really like one or two people came. And then there was an hour gap of no activity. And then it was like cut the hour gap. And then you just roll right into the next person. So they were cutting out huge gaps of the footage. Now, I don't know if you were looking at it, would you have noticed it? If it's a hard cut, I think, oh, wait a minute, that's a hard cut, but we can do so much AI editing now. And then your security camera is supposed to have a timestamp on the thing. Right. She tried. And that's what really got me fired up about this one. This lady actually tried, did her due diligence, and they just outright defrauded her. So I'm pretty fired up about it. Hopefully we get her a result and do some good things, but it's a really bad deal.
Sounds pretty bad.
Yeah. All right. That brings our show to a close. I've been your host, Phil Silverman. Chris Hield has been my co-host. Remember to like us, review us, follow us wherever you get your podcast. And as a reminder, nothing in this show is to be considered legal advice, and this has all been for entertainment purposes only. If you have a legal question, email us at info@silblawfirm.com and tell us you want it publicly answered in the podcast. Everybody have a great rest of your day and Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.